Welcome to the Mind of CMO. My name is Blake, and today we're joined by a very special guest, Jad. She is an extremely, how shall I put it? She embodies resilience, entrepreneurship, and the unwavering pursuit of dreams, perfection. So allow me to kind of unravel and explore this in a little bit more depth. And on the Mind of a CMO, we explore how, as a guest, as a human being, we are our own marketing officer of our own lives. So, Jad, welcome.
Hi, Blake.
So your journey has been an inspiring one up until this point, and I will have to admit that we've known each other for years, and I'm completely honored to have you on board for the first episode. Your journey has been a testament to resilience from what I've seen. Can you perhaps share a pivotal moment in your journey that has sort of allowed you to take charge of your life and bring you to where you are today?
I think there's been a few pivotal moments, but first I'd like to thank you for inviting me to participate in this. I'm honoured to be the first guest. I don't know, I remember being quite young, thinking that I needed to have a plan. And I was probably maybe 10, 11 years old. So I grew up in a fairly sort of tumultuous household, very aggressive, violent. We didn't have much money. We lived on welfare, that kind of cliche, if you like. And it is a cliche, so I don't really like to go on about it too much. But I just remember thinking, I need a plan. I don't feel like I want to live my life like this. So the first part of the plan was get an education. Do really, really well at school, the best that you can, and that might give you a platform to be a little bit less uncomfortable with where life's at. And then because we didn't have much money, we couldn't really participate in sports that cost a lot of money. And I always really, really loved sports. Like I loved sport in school, PE. I remember, I'm not going to tell you which Olympics it was. There was an Olympics and we held a mini Olympics at school, and I won a gold medal for one of the events in this Olympics. And I remember thinking, wow, wouldn't it be cool to actually go to the Olympics, to be a competitor in something? You know, and at that stage I had no idea what sports were in the Olympics. I just knew, you know, the gymnastics and swimming. I don't think I knew about any of the other sports in there. So when I was 13, I started judo, and the reason why I started that sport was because it was free at the PCYC club. So my second pivotal moment was after a few years of hard slog and not really doing well in judo to becoming the junior Australian champion. I was like, oh, this is something that could also change my life in a positive way. I can travel the world. I can represent Australia. I can maybe go to the Olympics, something that I dreamed about at that little mini Olympics that we had in primary school. So early in my life, they were probably the two pivotals. And then later, loss and grief and people dying were other pivotals. So, you know, I'm an older lady now, so there's there's turning points all throughout that process.
Yeah. So I don't want to touch on the loss part too much, but I'm aware that you've got two beautiful, gorgeous children.
Yes, thank God.
Who absolutely follow up in their mother's footsteps. How do you approach the responsibility of having dual roles of a mother and a businesswoman. How do you manage both of those relationships?
So I've been in business for 21 years now. My eldest daughter was 1 when I went into business for myself, but I did work beforehand, obviously, as well. And I remember back then the juggling act that it was, because it was really important to me to have, dinner on the table, eat with my family, spend quality time with my family and be involved in their development. So it's about time management in a nutshell. So when I first started in business, I had to obviously do everything myself. I think most entrepreneurs, start that way. You kind of learn all of the intricacies of your business from start to finish. And then you have to start figuring out how you're going to delegate the stuff either that you don't like doing or that you don't want to do or that you don't have time to do. So that's when I started to analyse the numbers. And I set myself some targets around how many memberships do I need to sell or how much revenue do I need to generate so that I can buy back a couple of hours here, a couple of hours there, so that I can be more present in my family life. And I also, with my kids, they taught me a lot, I think, about how to be a better leader. So it was really important for me to understand what their needs were at the different stages of development that they're in. So now, my eldest is in college and my youngest is starting year 9, high school. So they're 8 years apart, and there's different things that your children need in different stages of their development. And it's the same when you're leading in an organisation. You've got your people that are entry level, you've got your people that may have a lot of experience, but they're entry level into your organisation. So there's got to be a nurturing and communication process in place. The fundamental thing that I think crosses over being a mum and being the owner of my business is understanding what my people need, what they want and what they need, and understanding what I'm capable of delivering and what I need to either develop my own skills to be able to deliver, or communicating that there's not a capability to deliver that. So, sometimes I would equate things in terms of, revenue. I own a couple of different businesses. But if we talk about the gym, I'll say, okay, this is how many memberships I need to sell in order for you to be able to go to school or for you to do the activities that you want to do, or for us to go and spend 2 days on a holiday somewhere. So trying to get them to also understand where I'm coming from without making it their problem, but just to understand how I make my decisions. So I manage with an open book at home and in the workplace.
Do you think that being a mum has made you a stronger, more conscientious and decisive business owner?
Look, I was pretty decisive before I became a mum, but I was decisive not to be a mum. So here I am, 22 years later with 2 children. And I don't regret that. Because I think that it's one of the greatest achievements of my life. It's the most important thing that I've done with my life, is having those 2 children. And I've done some pretty cool stuff, but that one ranks number 1 for me. And I think that what it's done is it's helped me to prioritize.
Right, okay.
And make my decisions around the greater good of the family.
Yeah.
Okay. So if I do this, is this going to be good for me and the girls, or is this going to be bad?
Yeah.
If I do this and it gives me some kind of instant gratification and I feel good at the time, is me feeling good at the time going to be good for the girls and our family? And that's how I make my decisions personally.
Yeah. You mentioned before that you have multiple businesses. Now, you've got the facilities in Australia.
Yep.
And then you have your business here in Dubai.
Yep.
X50. And then you've also got an underwater winery, I'm going to say. Tell me about that. I've seen it and I've been meaning to ask you.
Oh, yeah, we haven't talked about that, have we?
No, we haven't. It's the one thing we haven't talked about yet.
So my friends in Croatia,
Yeah.
from Dubrovnik, so you know that's where I'm from
Yeah.
originally, or where my dad was from before he immigrated to Australia. They started an underwater winery in the Adriatic Sea, and it's actually the first underwater winery in the world licensed.
Yeah.
So they have a concession from the Croatian government for this piece of the Adriatic Sea where our wine is aged 20 metres underneath the sea, 15 to 18 metres. And the reason why they age it that way is that this particular piece of the Adriatic Sea remains consistent in temperature all year round.
Oh, wow.
So 14 to 16 degrees, which is ideal conditions for aging red wine. So the initial part of our production is the same in terms of the grapes and the harvesting and the fermentation, and then we bottle the wine and we age it in an amphora, but we also age the bottles on their own.
Is the terracotta.
Yeah, so it's in an amphora, and that amphora is also patented. So we've patented the packaging. And what's unique about that is that the wine doesn't see the light of day until you open it at the dinner table, wherever that is in the world, because the amphora creates this protection around the bottle. And so, and it's aged under the sea. So there's no light.
So you just ship the amphora to wherever it's been purchased.
Yeah. And so the second unique thing about the amphora is because it's aged under the sea, each particular amphora is unique, like its own fingerprint, because the sea determines how that's going to look, what coral formation it's got on there. The sea decides, the nature. And it's such a great tie-in with, Croatian culture. I don't know if you've ever been to Croatia.
It's on my bucket list.
You've got to go. So the nature is just spectacular. We have, 1,000 islands off the coast of Croatia, some uninhabited, some inhabited, and this winery is like on a peninsula. So, there's like the older fishing villages around there, and it's basically, sort of come from that fishing village background. But we grow our own grapes as well. It's grown from a particular region in Pelješac. It's called Dingač, and it's one of the most expensive grape varietals in the European region per kilo.
Oh, wow.
And the reason why that's also unique is no machinery can get there. Everything's got to be done by hand harvesting, and because it's on a slope of a mountain. Yeah. And the light is reflected from the ocean and the rocks below, and then you have the direct sunlight. So again, ideal grape growing conditions.
Yeah.
It's heritage protected, this land now, so it can't be used for anything else. The Croatian government's protected it. So yeah, it's a cool story,
Yeah.
and it's a really great wine. Yeah.
But I have to ask, like, that's such a distinct concept. Like, how did they come up with it? How did you come up with it? Like,
Well, I didn't come up with it. So the reason why I'm part of the party is because I was born in Australia and I speak English fluently. I already work in distribution and importing and logistics. They asked me if I could help them to get it out into the global circuit.
Yeah.
And it was right before the pandemic started, so that's obviously, put a little bit of brakes on, how far we've been able to get with it. But the boys came up with the idea maybe 8 or 9 years ago, something like that, and they decided to throw the bottle and see what happens. And then they're both divers, deep sea divers. They're both competent, in fishing, and one of them, his grandfather, had the winery, so it's kind of gone down in generations, where they were doing like the basic wines, and they've got their own vineyard and everything sort of attached to that. So it was just sort of this melding of creativity and existing family business where they wanted to experiment what happened with it. Because back in the day, the fishermen used to bring their flask of wine and their lunch for the day, and they'd leave it shoreline in the water so it wouldn't get hot, so it would stay cool, so the water would keep it cool, because obviously, we didn't have refrigeration and stuff like that back then. And so they wanted to see what happened when they threw it down. And so there was this whole big process of, stopping the elements from getting into the wine, sealing it properly, a whole process. It took a couple of years before they sort of got to a point where they got comfortable with this could be a good idea. And the idea behind it was the consistency and the temperature. They proved that it was good for the quality of the wine, that it wasn't just a gimmick. The consistency of the temperature and using nature as its natural cellar was something that made sense, particularly from a country that was very much attached to its nature as a heavy part of its culture.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So it's an exciting project that I agreed to be a part of, because I'm very proud of my Croatian heritage, and I want the world to know about Croatia and some of the special things that have come out of there, and the ideas and the innovation from such a small population and a tiny little country. Little dot in Europe, bring that to the world.
Is it a wide range of wine that's actually produced underwater, or is it a specific type?
So we've got a red wine, and we're now doing a white wine, and we're also doing a sparkling. But we started with the red. So one red, the grape varietal. I think the best comparison that I can give you, if you understand about wines, is that it's similar to the Zinfandel grape. Yeah. And then the white wine, we've used a combination of 3 grape varietals from the region.
Yeah.
And then the champagne, actually you caught me on the back foot with that one, because I'm not too sure.
Okay.
But because that was in the early stages of experimentation, and I believe that they're going to mass production now, which means that it's going to be an official launch to market. So I'm going to have to learn more about that one.
How do I get a bottle of that wine?
Well, fortunately here, I can't send it here.
Okay. Guess I'll have to come to Croatia.
You might have to come to Croatia, yeah.
But going back on one of your other businesses, so your fitness facilities, I'm very curious. Obviously, COVID was a little bit challenging for everybody.
Just a smidge.
Yeah, let's be honest.
I roll my eyes as I say that.
We got there. We got through it. But your facilities survived.
Yes. Thank
Came
God.
through it with, I would hazard a guess in saying probably shining colours. It was difficult, but you got there.
Mm-hmm.
How do you think your businesses have survived thus long? When you look at the fitness industry as a global industry, a multi-squillion dollar industry,
Yep.
and there are so many businesses that come and go, fads that come and go, things that survive 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Your facilities have been, I'm going to say 10 years?
21.
20, not even close.
21. I told you I'm old.
No, you're not. No, you're not. So 21 years. They've survived consistently for 21 years. They've
Yes.
survived COVID, 2009 as well, and they're still functioning and flourishing. What is the key?
So we're going to go back to something you asked me earlier. My leadership style
Yeah.
and capability, which I transitioned in motherhood to the workspace. I have a great crew. I have a really good team of people. And as a leader, I make it my business to know what people want and find a way to give it to them.
Yeah.
Because without my people, this is a service-based industry. Without my people, I don't have a business. So I look after my people. I've had a lot of employees. Most of my employees have worked for me for more than 10 years.
Oh, wow.
And I haven't lived in Australia for 9.
So you've clearly created a culture that's kind of passed down from you to whoever's
That's right.
managing physically your facility.
Find out what people want and find a way to give it to them. And you'll be surprised that money's not the number one factor. You know, people want freedom and flexibility. And so if you can, and that's what I wanted when I started the business. So when I found myself working 18-hour days and not being able to see my family and my children and participate in my sports and live my life and have my freedom the way that I wanted to, I knew that I needed to create an environment that allowed me to be a mum, but to also be a business owner and to have that balance.
Yeah.
And for a very long time, I didn't have that balance and I resented it and I didn't like it. And so I put myself in the shoes of everybody that's ever worked for me and said, well, if I don't like it, they probably don't like it either. So let's figure out how we can create an organisation that provides that to people, but also gives people a career path that are interested in that and trying to, look, I don't do it perfectly. I'd love to pay my people more,
Yeah.
all right, because the fitness industry is not really a highly paid industry.
It's a passion industry.
It is a passion industry and it's a changing people's lives industry, and I'm really, really proud of the work that we've done and the impact that we've made on that region in Australia where my gyms are.
Yeah.
Because it's a low socioeconomic, well, it used to be. I don't think anything's low socioeconomic in Sydney anymore.
No.
But it did used to be.
Yeah.
And, people laughed at me when I kind of started out going, what are you doing there? Like there's so many other more affluent places that you can work in and kick goals. And I said, well, it's where I'm from. And I want to make a difference because I want everybody to believe that they've got a crack at achieving things. I don't believe in stomping people down. So, I communicate very clearly what my expectations are. And again, I do that as a mum
Yeah.
and I do that as a boss. And so there's very rarely any arguments about my expectations because I'm pretty upfront about that. And I'm upfront about what the consequences are. And I'm upfront about what I can do for you in terms of meeting your needs.
Yeah.
And I have high integrity about achieving that. So if I say I'm going to do something for you or, you know, we make an agreement, I'll have to go to my grave before I would break that agreement, or there'd have to be an absolute, you know, out of left field occurrence where I would go, okay, I can't do this for you right now.
Yeah.
So I won't agree to things. And people will often say, oh, you don't want to make a decision. I said, not right now. I'll make a decision once I see whether or not I can actually deliver that for you. And if I can, then it'll be a yes. And if I can't, then I'll have to say no because I can't deliver it. But I put my utmost effort into delivering what I promise to people.
Do you think that having that drive to focus on delivering what you promise to deliver, do you think that's part of your success in owning 3 majorly different businesses in, I guess, what you could say is 3 completely different sectors? Do you think that's part of, the foundation of being able to manage, create, run, and consistently achieve success in those 3 businesses?
Yeah, I do. Because I made a very conscious decision about who I want to be. And, there's lots of things that have come and gone along the way. And, I've not always had good people around, and I've also learnt a lot along the way. But the core of me has always decided that I don't want to be a bad person because bad things have happened to me.
Yeah.
And that core of me is since my childhood. So I don't want to be a victim and I don't want to be a bad person.
Yeah.
So as long as I don't breach my own core, then I believe that things are going to work out to be okay. And that's like a very simplified, maybe naive kind of way of framing it. But that is the fundamental I believe, the fundamental for my success.
Yeah. I mean, I sit this side of the table and I can do nothing but admire, the risks that you've had to take in each and every one of these decisions, including having kids.
Yeah.
How do you actually manage and mitigate those elements of risk?
I accept. So I like to do either a formal or informal SWOT analysis of everything. And
Love me a SWOT.
I love a SWOT. And then I accept the risk. And once I've accepted the risk, then I'm good. I hate when I'm powerless. I hate when somebody pushes me here.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a choice
Yeah.
in the risk associated with that. So, the pandemic kind of put me in a tailspin for a minute.
Yep.
And then when I accepted that I couldn't do anything about what was going on here, then I sat down and said, right, what can we do, what can't we do? And let's go. Let's survive, And so I'm very quickly able to shift from, okay, this has happened and this has completely thrown a spanner in the works and I'm not comfortable and I'm not feeling good and, you know, the lost stuff put me on my face. But I was able to get up and say, okay, well, it is what it is. I can't change it. You know, once you accept the risk, then you go forward. I got pregnant. Now what?
It happens.
I'm having a mum. I'm having a baby. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now I've got to try and be the best mum that I can be. That's okay. I learned a shitload of stuff and it's been great. And my kids are amazing. Like I couldn't imagine life without them. So sometimes things happen that, you know, you can't plan for everything, I guess is what I'm trying to say. No one can. Life throws curveballs at all of us. Everyone's got their cross to bear. Everyone's got their trauma. Everyone's got their difficult mountain that they have to climb.
Yeah.
Every single human being on this planet. And I challenge anybody to stand forward and say, oh no, I've never had a mountain to climb. Because they're lying. It's crap. Even if you come from the perfect picket fence family.
Yeah.
There's going to be other mountains. It could be your health. It could be, I don't know. There's life's long. As short as it is, it's long as well. And a lot happens. So, you know, understanding how to accept the things that you can't control.
Yeah.
And if you step forward and say, I'm taking this risk, I'm going to invest this money, I'm going to buy this, I might lose it. But I accept that I might lose it. And so if I do lose it, I'll have an emotional reaction to it, but then I carry on.
Yeah. I mean, talking about resilience for a moment, do you think that, obviously, before you left Australia, owning your businesses in Australia, do you think that living abroad creates an additional, I guess, strength or an additional layer of resilience being outside of your home country? If we take that into consideration and remove COVID from the equation for a moment, do you think that, or do you remember a situation where, you know, your resilience was truly tested?
Yes. So, of course. Of course. I think anything that puts you out of your comfort zone tests and grows your resilience. Now, you can choose to do things that shift you out of your comfort zone so that you're developing your resilience, or you can be put in situations where you don't have a choice and then figure out how you're going to strengthen your resilience in that situation. But anything that's outside of your comfort zone tests your resilience. I deliberately test my resilience. I don't know that I've actually deeply analysed why I do that. I think that I like to keep learning, and I like to remind myself that life's going to throw curveballs to make me uncomfortable. And so by doing things that test my resilience, because ultimately I come from an athlete background. And as an athlete, you learn that repetition and training and turning up and discipline are the formula to get you the results. And so surviving life, in my view, is about being resilient. And so we need to practice being resilient. Otherwise we won't be.
Do you think sometimes resilience, or the need to be resilient, is kind of thrusted upon you more so than what you can handle? You know, there's that saying that people often say to us that, you know, the universe only gives you what you can handle.
Yes.
But do you not think that sometimes there's those moments where you're like, I'm good for today?
Oh, yeah. Look, I have fallen on my knees and put my hands up to the sky and said, God, please, I cannot. I cannot. Okay. And I've done that many times, particularly sort of in the last decade or a bit less, because I've lost half my family, you know. And for me, that has been the ultimate test of my resilience, because I didn't see it coming. It was all sudden. And I think that the practicing of the resilience helped me to be resilient in this situation. But when I found myself lost, and that was when I decided to start fighting again.
Yeah.
So I hadn't fought competitively for 16 years. And I used to do judo, which is grappling. And then after my husband died, I trained. I was going to boot camp, and I just couldn't find my fight. You know what I mean? I was like, everything that I'm doing, praying, training, I'm lost. I'm still struggling. And so I decided to go and learn kickboxing.
Yeah.
And I started kickboxing. And my coach that was teaching me said, oh, you should fight. And I was like, I'm too old to fight. I've been retired for 16 years from judo. I said, this is a completely new sport. Like, fight what? Are you joking? Like, I'll get killed. And he was like, I don't think you will. I actually think you're going to be pretty good. So that experience or that process helped me to become congruent again. So fighting in the ring helped me to find my fight in here again.
Yeah.
Because I did really, really struggle a lot. And I knew that I couldn't. I knew that I had to find a way to fix it because my girls were young and they needed me to not fall apart.
Yeah.
They needed me. So I had to find a way for me to be okay. And fighting was that way. Now, needless to say, I'm retired, I hope, properly now. like really, you know.
Yeah.
And I don't do sparring anymore, just so that I don't get any blows to the head. And that's a decision that was hard for me to make because physically I can probably still, you know, go out there and do it. But I need to preserve myself for my children. So I've started playing paddle tennis and, you know, that satisfies my competitive urge to feel like I'm, you know, winning something without hurting my head.
That's right, we'll jump on the court soon.
Yeah, we should jump on the court soon. We'll have fun.
You brought up a very sort of valid point, and it's something that I often wonder about whether people realize about the fitness industry. And that is that, you know, when I sort of changed recent employment situations, CrossFit was something that helped me process and wrap my head around the situation and start the shall we say, internal healing of the entire situation. Fitness is not just a physical attribute and a physical benefit. I've spoken to quite a few of my friends and they've all said the same thing, in that it actually has given them strength and given them further resilience by doing exercise, martial arts, or some form of physical fitness.
Absolutely.
Do you think that's played a part in your businesses being so successful as well?
Absolutely. So my background, when I graduated from high school, my actual education, the first pillar of my plan, I have a degree in psychology. So I remember the first 5 years that I was counselling people, the three things that I would talk to them about for, the pillars of mental health is exercise, nutrition, and relaxation.
Yeah.
These are the three pillars of mental health. And this is going back 3 decades ago.
That's just yesterday.
And I remember back then it wasn't such a mainstream conversation.
Right.
Okay. So back then, people, not everybody was members of gyms. People played like a little bit of sport when they were at school, and then, they'd get married and work, and sometimes they'd go for walks. Active people that loved, activity, would find things to do, bushwalking on the weekends, blah, blah, blah. But it wasn't such a mainstream part of culture like the fitness industry is now.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking back then, I'm so passionate about this. Like, I really, really believe that this is part of the solution for people's mental health. And that was why I wanted to make this gym a success in the western suburbs of Sydney, because I knew how much judo back then when I was a kid helped me with my mental health.
Yeah.
And that activity, what that did for my belief systems about me and about my potential and about my capabilities of dealing with difficult things and resilience and discipline and strength. Every time I am active, it's like it activates a trigger that reminds me of the whole journey that I've had in my whole life, what I'm capable of. And I'm so, so grateful to still be able to be active.
Yeah.
Like, I still do, kickboxing rounds. I was just on holidays for 2 months and I had a trainer there, and, we were training 4 or 5 days a week. I just don't spar. But I still love it, and I will always love it. And I love being active. I love going for a 7-kilometre walk. I love playing a game, something competitive. I love being active every day, and I attribute everything that I've ever achieved to that being one of the foundational things in my life. So whenever people are feeling down and they talk to me about that, the first question I ask them is, are you training? Are you exercising? What are you doing? Because the longer you stay on that couch and stagnate in that black hole, the harder it is to get active again, and the harder your situation becomes.
Yeah.
Because you end up going in the tornado of the black hole, and you've got to get yourself back up again.
Yeah.
I struggled. Like, when my husband died, I didn't train for 4 months. It's a really long time for somebody like me. But I couldn't face people, couldn't. I physically couldn't find a way to do it. And then I was like, you just have to. And I made myself go there. And I had huge anxiety about it, and I didn't feel comfortable. It was like out of my comfort zone. I didn't want people to ask me questions. I didn't want to talk about why I hadn't been there for 4 months. I just didn't want anyone to notice me or see me.
How did you find, we've spoken about this for me just sort of recently. How did you manage to find a safe space? Like, when my pivotal change happened just recently, I couldn't seem to find a space, a facility, however you want to put it, that I felt okay in. How did you manage coming out of that situation to find a safe space to then be able to repair?
I think I made myself my safe space. And I had a very unapproachable demeanour.
Just a really good resting bitch face.
Yeah.
I got to practice.
Do you know what I mean? Like I
Yeah.
just knew that there wasn't enough water in the well. And as much as, I said before, my integrity, my kindness is a really critical part of who I want to be as a person. At that particular time, because that's a crisis point in your life. It's one of the pivotals, right? You have to understand that there's not enough well in the water. And so you have to put yourself first.
Yeah.
You have to put yourself first, which is a very difficult thing to wrestle with. Like I think I used the example before as well about decision making. Like if I decide that I'm going to do something that's bad for me, like, go get drunk or whatever, I decide that that's what I need to do, and I own the consequences of that decision. And if that in the short term, in the bigger picture, might help me to feel better about, all of the other things that I'm going to do, then I own that.
Yeah.
Right? So it's the same in this situation. I was like, I need to train. I need to. And if I don't, that's when I'm really going to start to fall apart. Even though right now I feel emotionally torn to shreds, it's going to get worse than this. And I can't have it being worse than this because this is not something that I'm coping with.
Yeah.
Right? So I was like, I've got to go.
Do you think that the whole concept of...
And I've got to not worry about other people's feelings. Who I can engage with, I'll engage. But if I'm not comfortable, I'm just going to say it. Like I've had people ask me, how did he die? And I'm just like, I don't want to talk about it. And that's it. That closes the conversation. I don't owe anybody
an explanation.
A bigger explanation about doing things that I need to do to protect myself. And if that's rude or unkind, I'm not meaning for it to be. I'm just doing what I need to do to preserve myself.
Yeah.
So that's what I would advise anybody that struggles with that, to say, okay, we've just got to preserve yourself. Yeah. And you don't have to be an arsehole, but if people attack you with questioning that you're not comfortable with, then you got to be an arsehole. It's okay. So I don't want to talk about it.
And that's okay.
And that's okay, right?
Yeah.
Some things are not everybody's business. A lot of things are not everybody's business. And you're the CMO of your life, right? So you get to decide.
Yeah, I mean, that leads me to another question. Do you think that, the whole concept of it's not necessarily, you don't need to know that information. Do you think that we as a culture not we as a culture, but do you think in this day and age people are sharing too much information?
Maybe, but I think that even without technology, you always had your village gossip.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, true.
And I think that people who are overly interested in the detail of other people's lives generally are escaping looking at their own life. That's what I think. I might be wrong.
Yeah.
It might just be simple curiosity. I don't have time to delve into the details of every single other person's dirty laundry or clean laundry, for that matter. But I like to, when I'm interacting with somebody, for that interaction in real time to be a real interaction.
Yeah.
I have a rule in my house: no phones at dinner.
I love that rule. Couldn't agree more.
And that's the rule. And I don't care who you got to reply to or what you've got on, including myself.
Yeah.
The phones go so that we can have a real interaction and a real conversation and uncover each other's, real stuff that's going on, vulnerabilities, achievements, excitement. I want to know what's going on in your life and I want to comprehend it. And maybe I can help you, or maybe I just can listen to you.
Yeah.
And I want you to listen to me as well. I want to be heard too. Otherwise, I'm going to have to share it to my however many thousand followers because no one's listening to me.
Yeah.
And I think that that's why we overshare, because we're not feeling heard.
I mean, it also makes it kind of makes you think that in a day and age where we're so connected, we seem to be very disconnected with each other. Do you think there's a way to fix that?
Get rid of the devices. In blocks of time. We need them. I think, with progress, we become attached to the convenience of what that progress brings. But I think that we also should never forget what's important for the core. So, as I said earlier, my integrity and being a kind person are fundamentally important things to me.
Yeah.
So I always have to ask myself the question, when I did this or if I do this, what's the impact on that? So you review. I mean, we're all human. We make mistakes. We don't.
Yeah.
I'm far from perfect, Blake. Far from it. I have made horrendous mistakes and done things that I'm not proud of. We all can sit here and talk about all the fantastic achievements and how fantastic we are. But we also have to look at the black side too and do something about that and be aware of that and shift our behaviour. So if we want to be more connected, which every human being that I speak to says they do, I mean, there's people that say that they hate the world and don't want to be connected to anybody because of the way that the world's become, because of the disconnectedness.
Yeah.
Then we need to acknowledge that we're not being connected and take some action. Otherwise, it's empty words. There's no integrity behind it, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, so you own multiple businesses across multiple different countries, and you've got 2 beautiful daughters. Do you think that there's positive sides and negative sides of social media for business and for your 2 children?
Absolutely.
How do you manage that minefield of positives, negatives, business, private, personal, all of that?
How do I do that? I don't know. Look.
Risk management?
Risk management, obviously. But sometimes my day is even so, I live my life like a soldier. Except when I'm on holidays.
Yeah.
So it's very regimented, Sometimes it's broken down to even blocks of 5 minutes. I will literally say to a person, you have 3.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And then I need to get to the next thing that's on my soldier list for the day. All right. I've run into people at the grocery store and I'm like, I've got to go because my daughter's going to be home. Dinner has to be cooked.
Yeah.
And I've literally got to be home in the next 60 seconds. So I'm really, really sorry. Got to go. And they just laugh at me and I'm like, this is how it is. Because if I sit here and chat with you, she's not going to have dinner. I'm not going to be able to train, blah, blah. And it just snowballs then the whole day. So, yeah, it's pretty military. But it always was. I remember, when I was on the Australian judo team, I'd get up at 4:45 every morning and go for a run.
Yeah.
So that I could get back home, have a shower, have breakfast, and be on the train to work on time. Because I worked 3 jobs. I trained 25 hours a week. I wanted to represent Australia, but I also needed to keep a roof over my head.
Yeah.
So it had to be military. Took the judo bag with me, did weights at lunchtime, went to judo straight from work. And that's just how my day was. So then when I'm on holidays, people ask me, what do you want to do? And I'm like, no tours, no, I just want to sleep until I wake up, whatever time that is.
Yeah.
Because that's a holiday for me.
Yeah.
That's a holiday for me. Not having to be regimented and living the military. You know, I have to book in social activity. And then once I've booked it in, then I've blocked that time out and I allow myself to be engaged in that moment.
Yeah. You mentioned before that you've studied psychology, and I'm curious about if I put two of them together. So, do you think that social media is going to have a positive or a negative effect on your children's social behavior and their upbringing? And is there a way you could manage that?
I think it's negative impact. I already see negative impact. And I think that it's going to get worse, you know, with more filters and voice augmentation and body augmentation that we can do with all of the technology now. I think that it's dystopian. You know, I think that kids are getting the wrong messages, and I see the shift in the behaviour as well. And I don't have any control over it unless I ban it. And we all know that, you know, whatever adults ban children to do, that's exactly what they're going to go and do.
Yeah.
So all I can do is have conversations. Again, I think it comes back to connectedness. And I think that we have to really, as humanity, make a conscious decision to not accept the lack of connectedness that we are currently living in as the future norm. Because I don't think that we'll survive.
Yeah.
I don't think that we'll survive if we accept that. We can accept that technology is changing and moving forward, but I don't think we should accept the lack of connectedness.
So as a parent, how do you, I mean, I know you said, you know, have an open conversation and talk about it, but do you also sort of, I guess, talk about the precautions and the guidelines and sort of potential negative outcomes of social media use with your daughters?
Yeah, we've had lots of conversations,
Yeah.
and you know, lots of stuff has happened that we've had to have even more conversations about. You know, what's appropriate, what's not appropriate.
Yeah.
Why your generation might think it's appropriate, but why in 5 years' time you might think that's not appropriate.
Yeah.
I'm fortunate that my children are 8 years apart in age. So my eldest daughter also can talk about her experience because she's had a YouTube channel since she was, I think, 9 years old, 10 years old. So she can sort of revert back to, I'll die if anybody sees that footage now. What I thought was cool when I was 10 is absolutely not cool for the world to see now.
Yeah.
You know, and that's the interesting question. When you're young, you're like, oh, if this is out there for the world to see forever, how would I feel about it? Well, when you're young, you say, I wouldn't care. It's just like getting tattoos. It's like all of that stuff. I think it's just part of the culture of growing up and trying to help that younger generation navigate and understand potential consequences, because not everything necessarily ends up being a consequence or a negative consequence of that decision.
Yeah.
So just understanding the potential consequences.
And then you throw AI into the mix.
Yeah, look, I'm scared of AI, not going to lie. I'd rather get in the ring with Tyson.
Would you, would you have kids in this day and age? Compared to when you had them and how you raised your kids and obviously what was happening with social media?
If you asked me 30 years ago, my answer was no. Back then, in that day and age.
Okay.
I didn't think that the world was a great place. So my answer would probably be no now as well. But knowing what I know, I think that everyone should have kids because kids are a compass. If I didn't have my kids, I don't know where I'd be because their mere existence forced me to be resilient in a situation where I absolutely wanted to just fall apart.
Yeah.
You know? So I thank God for them because kids are hope. They're the future. Without them, there's no future. And we can shape, I think, the world, family unit by family unit, by shaping the values that we instill in our kids. It's the only hope we got. Otherwise, what? We die out, this one generation, and then that's it. No more human beings. It's a finite amount of time that we're here.
Yeah.
And we can make a difference. We just have to be conscious of trying to. Can't control everything, can't fix everything. But, you know, if we've got the right intentions and we go forward with the right intentions, I think that we can definitely have a positive impact. And procreation is a positive impact on the world because they're the future.
I mean, social media has positives and negatives. There's, you know, risk versus reward. But from a mental health standpoint, how do you navigate social media to protect your mental health?
Well, I don't look at it in the day when I'm at work. I like it for the news.
Yeah.
And I call it, you know, the news about my people.
Yeah.
And the news, you know, about people that I don't know.
Yeah.
And so I treat it as such. So in the evening when I'm winding down and I look at the various newspapers that I get my, you know, current affairs information from, I flick through those and I flick through my social media. And then I, you know, forward on to people that I know things would be of interest to. And I respond to the people that have sent me stuff that day. That's how I navigate it. But some people are on there 24/7. It's like an addiction.
Yeah. And
I see it in this Gen Z. You know, they have these snap streaks. It's like, do you even know what that is? I had to find out what it was because apparently it's the most important thing of life. If you don't send that image, then you break the streak, and then I don't know what the consequences of that are, but apparently it's the end of life. I don't know. Yeah, so it's. I think it's going to be harder for the next generation.
I mean, with the increase of you know, AI's involvement in algorithms and social media, like, how concerned are you about the potential for, I guess, news echo chambers or you know, the reinforcement of existing biases, whether it's negative or positive? Like, is there a way to mitigate that for you personally or for your daughters?
No, because we are confined to our belief systems about the world based on our own experiences of the world. Now, someone can tell me something and then I decide whether or not I believe that.
Yeah.
I can read a book and I decide whether or not I believe that.
Yeah.
I see something on social media, I have to decide whether or not I believe that. It's really going to be about, you know, how the constructs of education, how critically we'll be encouraged to think. I'm a critical thinker, but I grew up in a generation where critical thinking was part of the education process.
Yeah.
I'm not so sure that that's encouraged too much these days.
Okay.
We want people to be innovative. That seems to be very much part of culture. But critical thinking seems to have kind of shifted to the wayside a little bit,
Yeah.
I've noticed. If you're critical, if you're a critical thinker, if you have an opposed view, you get cancelled these days. That's scary because that's the start of inhibiting your voice. And as I said earlier, like somebody like me, if I don't feel like I've been heard, if I feel disempowered from being heard, then that makes me very, very uncomfortable. I can't lead. I can't be a good mum. I need to be heard.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily need to be heard on social media, but I need to be heard in order to be able to function competently. I believe that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we don't need to be heard.
Yeah. I mean, from a sort of a marketing standpoint, and I use an example of any product where you see it and then the algorithm consistently pushes that specific brand and that specific content to you. In the same context as AI, or the algorithm controls a specific news topic or a echo chamber of information that's about a specific political standpoint or something like that. Do you think there's a way to avoid that, or even the likelihood for a whole new industry that helps you separate and ascertain that information as to what's correct and what's not? A little bit about fake news, if you want to put it that way.
Yeah. Look, I think we're in dangerous waters. I think that the altruistic side of me says that, people that understand technology, and I'm not very au fait with technology. It's always been a struggle for me. If they put in place the checks and balances so that we have a balanced view being presented to us, then we're going to be okay. And if they don't, then we're not.
Yeah. I mean, productivity wise, from an AI standpoint, there's, it's going to make marketing people's job so much easier. It's going to, content creators, etc. But what's going to happen with the people that their job that it replaces?
That's right. What is going to happen to them? Because the thing is, everybody needs to be a productive member of society.
Correct.
Otherwise, your mind starts to drift off into places of self-destruction, which is unhealthy for your mental health. So, it's great. I think that it's great to have things in place to help make you more efficient and help you manage your time more efficiently. Like, thank God I have a washing machine and I don't have to wash things by hand because I don't know how I'd fit that into my day with everything else that I do. But sitting on the couch with a remote control that runs my whole entire household, including my groceries and everything from start to finish, what is the purpose of me then?
Yeah.
And I think that that's the danger. The danger is to lose what the purpose of a human being is. Look, for me personally, I have a very, 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 very strong belief in God. And for me, the important thing is that I don't lose that faith and that belief system.
Yeah.
Everyone's got different stuff that's important to them, but that's really, really important to me. And I think that we can only hand that down from generation to generation. I don't think that we should leave machines in charge of our faith in a supreme being. you know. That's for me. And I think that holds true for a lot of other things and a lot of the fear around the fake news. But how do you make people have integrity? You can't force it. You have to assess for yourself whether or not you believe the core of the information that you're being given is true.
Yeah.
We still are always going to have to discern what we think is reality and what we think is not. We have that freedom to decide that.
You sort of made a comment about, the future and leaving things behind. You've created such a strong foundation. Now, with the implementation of AI and all the other elements, do you think this is a potentially positive outcome for your businesses? Can you leverage this to increase the success of your businesses?
I don't know. I think AI is a pretty big threat for small and medium enterprise. I think that what I do in the fitness industry, I think that it's always going to require connectivity.
Yeah.
To make an impact on somebody's life. And I know that with me particularly, when I'm sitting in the room with somebody, I know I have a positive impact because I believe from the core of my being in what I'm saying and what I'm doing. So, I carry the room with me in that process. And I don't feel like I've ever quite figured out how to translate that to like a screen presence or a podcast presence as much as me being physically present does. And even my staff say that, like, when I go back to Australia, they're like, wish you were here more.
Yeah.
And I wish I was too, but I can't be everywhere. So I haven't been able to make that transition. So what I understand that I have to offer is still in this physical world.
Yeah.
Other people, they translate well on screen or voice. And so they have more of an advantage than I do with AI.
Yeah.
For me personally, I don't think AI is going to be that much of an advantage for what I do. It'll be great for marketing. It'll be great for, crunching the numbers. But, one of the guys that works with me in Australia, he's always been very interested in, new technology. And we've done a lot of, like, newer kind of technological stuff that other people hadn't thought about doing at that stage. And I was always resistant. Like, he'd laugh at me. I was always resistant. But the things that make our life easier, I've accepted and said, yeah, that does make our life easier. So, automate what you can, but never lose sight of the fact that you need to factor in how you're going to have that human interaction.
Yeah.
Unless the industry you're working in doesn't require it. But I feel like we still have to factor in human interaction. Otherwise, what's the point of us?
Yeah.
What's the point of us?
I'm curious in that, you've obviously got 3 phenomenal businesses, 2 phenomenal daughters. What type of legacy do you want to leave behind?
Well, I want to leave something that outlives me. And a cultural perspective and a thought process that continues on because I started the conversation back in the day.
Yeah.
I want to be remembered as a leader that cared about the people that I worked with and tried to make a difference in their lives too, a positive difference. None of us are immortal. And no one's better than anybody else. We're going to end up in the same place at some point in time. And I think that that's why I have such a strong attachment to my faith. So I think the best legacy that we can leave is for people to remember us in a positive way with whatever it is that we're able to offer, you
Yeah.
know. Some people have artistic talent, some people have sports talent, some people are talented in their interactions with other human beings. They're exceedingly kind, generous, charitable. Some people are great leaders, some people are great coaches, some people are great students, some people are great mums. I think you just got to try and be the best version that you can be. That's your legacy.
Yeah.
No one's immortal. Are they?
True. Very true. I want to finish with one more question. You own a business in Australia, a business in Croatia, and a business in Dubai. Now, each of those are obviously very different markets, very different businesses, and you've had the resilience and the strength to be able to ensure, irrespective of the risk, that those businesses have been successful. One of the many reasons why I admire you. But what is some key advice that you would give somebody that wants to start a business anywhere in the world?
Well, what did I watch? I watched a little excerpt on a interview with, is it Kawasaki that wrote Rich Man Poor Dad?
Mm-hmm.
Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah.
And, you know, he talks about how we don't learn about money in school, and how he learnt all the fundamentals of business from his rich dad by going to work and not getting paid.
Yeah.
The boss doesn't get paid, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to understand that you're not going to get paid. You've got to live and breathe what it is that you're trying to get out there into the world. So, you know, when I started with the gyms, it was really important to me to live and breathe it and get my message out there, because I wanted people to exercise.
Yeah.
I wanted people to understand what the benefits of exercise were going to be to their life. And I came at it from an athlete's perspective, but then I learnt to understand it from just an average consumer perspective. Because people aren't going to get up at 4:45 a.m. every day like a soldier and go and do that 5K run because they're training for whatever international event. That's outside of the scope of their daily thinking. So I had to learn how to frame it in a different way so that it can change people's lives.
Yeah.
And I think that you just have to understand that the resilience comes from being very attached to your purpose, your vision, your mission, and understanding that the boss doesn't get paid.
Yeah.
And it does work itself out down the track. But people don't see that process that it goes through. They just see the material outcome of that and go, oh, you're lucky.
Yeah.
Okay. Swap for a minute.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Although I wouldn't swap. I wouldn't change anything that I've been through.
No.
It makes me me. I wouldn't be the Jad sitting in front of you right now if I hadn't have gone through every single one of the things that I've gone through in my life. So I'm grateful for all of it.
I'm going to leave it on that note.
We're good?
Yeah, we're good. Thank you so much. I am speechless as to the gratitude for coming on today. So thank you.
You're most welcome. Hope you knock it out of the park.